It's the next best thing to your own skin. Painstakingly crafted by skilled hands and machinery that stretches the limits of high tech. It'll keep you dry, take your pulse, and save the life of a hero trying to save you. From the totally hot.
Come on, this is a dream job for every man in the world.
To the refreshingly cool.
I would say don't go into the operating room without it.
It's time to take a peek at the untold story of underwear on Modern Marvels. Welcome to the Underwear Affair, an annual race in Los Angeles, California that benefits the City of Hope Hospital. In this revealing celebration of what normally is out of sight, participants wear their favorite unmentionables for all to admire. Every shape, style, color, and size is represented. Chances are that few of these guys have any clue that their boxers or briefs have already been through a marathon of sorts before they even bought them. For Jockey International, one of the industry's leading players, that long journey begins at manufacturing sites all over the world, including the Central American nation of Honduras. At its plant in San Pedro Sula, over 700 workers produce more than 26 million undergarments per year.
What you're seeing now is our sewing facility. We're sewing in this facility 40,000 dozens per week, which are roughly 500,000 pairs of underwear.
300 workers in the sewing facility piece together everything from t-shirts to women's underwear to the classic style that's been around since 1935, the Jockey Y-front brief. The Y-front brief is made from 4 pieces of cotton fabric, strategically sewn together with the open fly flap positioned at the front. Resembling an upside-down Y, the flap provides support and easy access when nature calls.
We're the only company that produces it, and that is what, differentiates us from the other companies. It's our trademark.
Jockey's signature brief is composed primarily of cotton. After the cotton is cleaned and combed at Jockey's plants in North Carolina, it arrives in Honduras. At the Parkdale plant in San Pedro Sula, this raw material must be reduced to the thin cotton yarn from which every brief is made. First, in a process called drafting, rollers compress 5,200 fibers of the combed cotton into one strand a ½ inch thick, called sliver. The sliver then passes through another machine. These rollers are running 30 times faster than the first drafting process, and they give the yarn a tight spiral twist, reducing its thickness even more.
And we put this material onto a bobbin that is going to allow us to transport the material to the next process, which is spinning.
The spinning process stretches the yarn to its final width, 2 1/100ths of an inch thick, about the same thickness as a human hair. The yarn winds up on rolls 1 foot in diameter. Each roll has enough yarn to stretch more than 20 miles. That's just long enough to get it to its next destination in Honduras. Alcatex, an independent textile factory. Here, machines knit the yarn into the fabric used to make all of Jockey's underwear.
Our plant is designed to produce about 1.8 million pounds of fabric a week.
The knitting machines are programmed to produce hundreds of different styles and thread counts. The thread count determines the thickness and strength of the fabric.
We actually have 792 needles, 34 threads going into the machine at the same time. And it has a 14 cut. That means that there's 14 needles per inch knitting at the same time.
In 6 hours, one knitting machine will churn out 400 pounds of cotton fabric. After bleaching, it's now ready to become a brief. At yet another site, the cutting facility, 300 workers hand-cut the pattern pieces that make up the classic brief and other jockey undergarments.
It's not the easiest job. Actually, it requires a lot of skill. Their training for hand cutting takes around 6 months, which is a long period for them to become 100% operator.
The cutters wear chainmail gloves to protect their hands as they wend their way through the twists and turns of the patterns. The fabric they cut is 200 layers thick. To craft more exacting designs, they use a die-cutting machine. Every week, man and machine combine to produce enough fabric pieces to make over 1 million undergarments. The next step happens at Premier Narrow Fabrics. Machines in this factory are creating the elastic bands that give jockey briefs that nice snug fit. Elastic has been holding up our underpants since the 1930s, when it replaced cumbersome buttons, snaps, and ties. The elastic strands, consisting of spandex-coated cotton, are woven on a mechanized loom engineered by inventor Joseph-Marie Jacquard.
Behind me is a Jacquard Mueller machine, 48 hooks, used to weave elastic. You can do names or patterns of designs with this machine that automatically puts in the designs or name in there for you.
Every week, Premier Narrow Fabrics provides the bands for 400,000 pairs of jockey briefs. Finally, the elastic bands and cut fabric meet at the sewing facility, where skilled hands and high-tech machinery team up to form the finished briefs and boxers. For centuries, men did without underwear as we know it, wearing tights that were open at the crotch, letting it all hang loose beneath their tunic-like overgarments. But during the Renaissance, when those garments got embarrassingly shorter, men donned pouch-like attachments called codpieces. Some codpieces not only concealed a man's assets, but also accentuated them. And some even doubled as change purses. In the 19th century, the underwear of choice for both men and women was the one-piece woolen union suit. The first ones were dyed red.
Of course, they played havoc with the wash water because they all ran, and it was just kind of a mess.
By the late 1800s, all union suits were uniformly woven with dull gray wool thread. This purely functional garment was designed to keep you warm and protect your outer clothing from body oils and odors. Some men wore the same union suit all winter without ever taking it off. The drop seat in the back was an ingenious way to stay toasty in the outhouse in the cold winter months.
When you think about life pre-1900s, it was really all about food and shelter and underwear because half the world needed to keep warm at certain times of year.
Although the woolen union suit kept its wearers warm, it also made them very itchy. But in 1887, an enterprising textile worker named George Munsing came up with a machine that brought much-needed relief.
He decided that he could invent a knitting machine that put silk threads on the inside of the knitted underwear and leave the wool on the outside where it provided the warmth and the strength. But the silk would be next to your body and hopefully take the itch away. Well, did it ever.
In the 1920s, the union suit went through more pivotal changes. Designers lopped off the sleeves and shortened the pants. They made versions in cotton for the summer months. Then the one piece became two separate pieces. The pants became known as boxers because they resembled the shorts worn by prize-fighters. But what was a big hit in the ring still wasn't something people spoke of in polite society. In fact, underwear models wore masks to hide their identities. But by the 1930s, that taboo was beginning to disappear. 1934, a jockey marketing executive was inspired by a postcard he received from the French Riviera.
And he looked at the postcard, and he saw this very abbreviated swimming suit. And he looked at it and he said, "Underwear."
And in 1935, when the jockey brief made its debut at Chicago's Marshall Field's department store, it quickly became the star attraction. This marked the first time that retailers dared to display underwear in public. And the bold move worked. The risque design sold out immediately.
Customers had bought out the entire stock that they had and proceeded to remove everything that was in the windows. So it seemed to be a brief success.
But the success was anything but brief. The scandalous undergarment caught on in America, and the jockey team rushed fresh supplies to retailers on a private airplane they called the Masculiner. But the new ads depicting a bride and groom dressed in cellophane, revealing their unmentionables, had Hitler and his master race shaking their heads.
And so when they saw this picture of the cellophane wedding, here was a clear way to once again demonstrate the inferiority of the Western democracies. Now everybody in the United States gets married in their underwear, and nothing is sacred anymore. Not even marriage is sacred anymore. And so in many ways, jockey was at war with Hitler before the rest of the world.
Jockey won its war, of course, and the popularity of its brief grew over the decades. Today, 41% of men prefer briefs to boxers. They're among the 2 billion pairs of men's underwear sold in the United States every year. And on average, every adult male owns 18 pairs at any given time. Jockey's largest men's brief is size 68. But each year, just for fun, the company produces this supersized pair, reminding us that their brief will always be a giant in the underwear world. But guys don't have a monopoly on the market. Women have their own spin on underwear, including a bra with brains. In 2006, global sales of men's colored briefs eclipsed those of white briefs for the first time. Underwear will return on Modern Marvels, here on History. If men's underwear is a world full of classic briefs and boxers, women's intimate apparel is a universe unto itself. Let's call this factory Planet Pantyhose. Located in Lumberton, North Carolina, the 500,000 square foot facility is part of the Kaiser Roth Hosiery Corporation. They do it all here, from making the textured nylon yarn to knitting the individual units called leg blanks. After a worker slides 2 leg blanks simultaneously on this machine, the machine inserts connective fabric and sews them together. Once the pantyhose is assembled, the toe seams are sewn in, and then they're ready to be transported to the inspection center. Those aren't beams of light shooting through the network of PVC pipes. They're the pantyhose racing toward their destination.
In the years past, you had to transport garments by hand truck. By installing PVC pipe coming up from the sewing equipment, we can now transport it by air, by PVC, up to the inspection stands.
After the inspectors carefully scrutinize the pantyhose, they're dyed in huge vats. More inspections follow to confirm the final product is leg-worthy and run-free. Pantyhose made its debut in 1959. Before that, women wore individual stockings made of silk or nylon. Each leg was knitted flat and joined by a seam in the back. Keeping the seam straight was a daily preoccupation. During World War II, when nylon was needed for the war effort, mostly to make parachutes, women gave up their sheer leg coverings and painted the seam on the back of their bare legs. When the war ended, they ignited a run on stockings, storming department stores everywhere to reclaim them. The individual hose were secured by garters, which were usually attached to a tight foundation garment, like a girdle.
You could look 5 pounds thinner in a Playtex panty girdle.
The girdle, made of restrictive rubber, was actually a welcome change from its historical predecessor, the corset. Made of silk, it had vertical steel support rods called boning.
You get a particular hourglass silhouette that was very fashionable circa 1890.
The corset was something of a torture device in the 19th century's Victorian age.
The women would wear very tight corsets and lace them up and practically kill themselves in those corsets. It's like a little joke, but it was the liposuction of that time.
In Queen Victoria's time, a woman wore her corset over a loose top and bloomers, the only true underwear of the day. And she may have added another figure-enhancing item for the fashion-conscious, a metal hoop skirt construction called a train extender.
Then she would use a bustle that would, again, tie around her waist and create a larger frame. It's a bunch of springs, wire springs, that would compress when you sat down.
We need to enhance the curve at a lower apex point.
Today, women's undergarments are taking a cue from the past, but they incorporate new twists on an old theme. The corset has taken center stage in the production line at Shirley of Hollywood, a 60-year-old underwear emporium.
Underwear, I mean, come on, this is a dream job for every man in the world. This is what I get to deal with on a daily basis. You know, beautiful women in their underwear.
Models try prototype corsets on for size, and once they're perfectly form-fitting,
yeah, I can breathe very perfect, actually. Good. Very easily.
mass production begins. Instead of the rigid metal boning used in the past, Shirley's uses plastic rods in the vertical seams. But occasionally the garment calls for some stiffer reinforcements. That's when Shirley's seamstresses use flexible metal rods called spirals.
Spiral boning gives a lot more support than the plastic one. It's a little bit stiffer, a little bit firmer, but it still also bends.
The modern-day corset is a kinder, gentler version of its historical predecessor, but it still makes a strong statement.
We bring Hollywood glamour. We really bring the touch of Hollywood, the glamour and styling from our home here in Hollywood.
It enhances the figure, makes the waist all nice, and pushes you up where it needs to be, makes that hip line nice. You know, you can't beat that.
Although many women love to don alluring corsets like these, their Victorian-era ancestors couldn't wait to pry themselves free from theirs. In the 1920s, a welcome alternative arrived in the form of a smaller, newfangled support garment called the brassiere. The brains behind the bra were seamstresses Ida Rosenthal and Enid Bissett.
They had this idea, this is during the flap era when the flat-chested women were sort of the rage, and they felt that dresses and women looked better, more flattering, when you could sort of highlight their natural form.
Ida and Enid's brainchild became the first to be called a maiden form, and the company has been synonymous with the bra ever since. Maiden form engineers were the pioneers of individual cup size and the adjustable strap. And with the help of models to size their products, they continue to be on the cutting edge of bra design.
I come into the office, I take off my clothes, and I put bras and panties on.
To make the smoothest, most integrated product possible, Maidenform uses ultrasonic fusion technology to attach its materials. You can't hear it, but high-frequency sound waves alone weld the fabrics together
When we take the inner and outer materials, such here, and with a foam lining, and you hit them with a very, very high-pitched noise, it actually seals up the edge, and you can do it with a decorative edge. The benefit is that you get the smoothest transition between cup and bust.
The biggest challenge in women's intimate apparel has always been forming the bra's cups to fit an individual woman's figure.
A woman's bust is three-dimensional, and fabrics are two-dimensional. So whether you're sewing them here, or you're fusing them together, or molding them, you're always trying to change the characteristic of a two-dimensional material into a three-dimensional material.
Maidenform's design lab features precision equipment that can make a bra cup with pinpoint accuracy. With the appropriate pressure, temperature, and time, the cups emerge. Precisely formed and ready to be sewn into a bra. This technology eliminates the spiral stitching used in decades past to give the material a cup-like shape, like the famous bullet bra that debuted in the 1940s. In 1943, eccentric billionaire Howard Hughes went beyond that to create the world's first steel underwire push-up bra for the amply endowed Jane Russell, the star of his film, The Outlaw. Bras went through many incarnations in the 20th century, from the cross your heart for lift and separation,
Cross your heart, see? You're suddenly shapelier.
to the popular sports bra of today, used for support during exercise. One innovative sports bra made by Textronics in Wilmington, Delaware, does much more than that. It's smart enough to tell women their heart rate as they work out.
The secret sauce behind our technology lies in the fabric sensors. These are highly stretchy, highly conductive sensors that we integrate directly into the fabrics as we knit them. So this garment comes off of the knitting machine with the sensors built right in.
The sensors in the band circling the rib cage pick up the body's electrical impulses, then transmit the data to a digital readout on a watch or treadmill.
Traditionally, heart rate was taken by placing 2 fingers on an artery. This was really difficult considering the fact that we now had to count and do math and probably stop working out, which obviously defeated the whole purpose of taking a heart rate.
You're gonna get a better monitor, better feeding, everything. So it's awesome. Love it.
If you think a brainy bra is awesome, what about underwear that just might save your life? In 1991, the average bra size in the United States was 34B. Today, it's 36C. Underwear will return on Modern Marvels. The main thing we demand of underwear is simply comfort. But the Wickers brand delivers much more, and the proof is in the polyester material, which is made here at Beverly Knits in Gastonia, North Carolina. Wickers works for you while you're working up a sweat. They do this using a process called wicking, which defines so-called performance underwear.
The whole idea of performance is moisture management and moisture wicking. The ability to move moisture away from your body to keep you drier and therefore keep you warmer and more comfortable.
We had a lot of people who experience hyperthermia because you're out there, it's cold, you're sweating still, and it just sticks to you. With this fabric, it just keeps moving moisture, and it retains heat, so you won't get cold.
In some cases, you want to be kept cooler, and that helps during the summertime, too, because the evaporation of your perspiration is creating an air conditioning feel on your body.
This is an experiment of moisture management. This is a single fabric. It's just folded over. The part of the fabric against the body and the part of the fabric that's away from the body. So against the body, as you have moisture, you'll see it goes in almost immediately. On the other side, again, now that's the same fabric, but that water will sit there for quite a while.
How does Wickers manage this trick? A big factor is how the polyester is knitted.
This form of knitting is good for the wicking because we have denier gradient yarns. We have one yarn that has a lot more filaments or little fibers than the other yarn. And so the yarn that's got the fewer fibers are next to the skin. The yarn that's got the more fibers are on the outside. And that pulls the moisture through the fabric and spreads the moisture up into the garment, and then it evaporates and cools the hiker or skier or soldier or whatever down as they're doing their activities.
But there's another secret to making this moisture movement fabric, which occurs at another site, as machines dye the material. It's called Aquatech, a proprietary chemical procedure that actually changes the molecular structure of the polyester fabric. The fabric requires this special treatment because without it, it's hydrophobic, meaning it doesn't absorb water.
It becomes a totally different molecule. And the molecule that comes out will wick away water or other substances and also dry really fast. So the chemical changes the polyester from a non-absorbent man-made fiber into an absorbent man-made fiber. Then the wicking that's applied will last for the life of the garment.
Beverly Knits also manufactures another line of Wickers underwear that not only moves moisture, but is also fire resistant. The Wickers team developed this product in 2003 for forest firefighters in the western United States. The company later learned it could be of invaluable use to America's military forces in Iraq. Wounded soldiers were experiencing life-threatening complications caused by the standard polyester t-shirts they wore under their uniforms.
This Marine Corps surgeon, Captain Welling, was operating in the field, would notice that the burn injuries had been exacerbated by the melting of the polyester. So he had to first surgically remove the melted polyester from the body before he could begin any surgery on the burns that were inflicted to begin with.
Wickers fire-resistant fabric consists of two different yarns. One is a fine wool made from merino sheep. The other is a form of rayon made from wood and treated with silica, a natural fire retardant.
So this wool is made of the best wool in the world. It's imported from Europe. And this rayon fiber allows the fabric to, when it burns, to char and not cause it to melt to the skin.
What we're going to do is show you a test of flammability. Now, this is a normal piece of polyester not treated. And you'll see it'll burn and then drip. And that's normal polyester. This is a Wickers fabric that's inherently flame retardant.
When ignited, the wool and rayon material chars, but the smoky emission is non-toxic. This sets the Wickers material apart from many conventional fire-resistant fabrics, like this one made from a type of acrylic that doesn't burn, but does emit toxic gases when it smolders. Wickers manufactures a variety of fire-resistant undergarments that it markets online.
We have a balaclava in flame retardant, which is a hood. So it goes over your head and it covers the neck area. It's good for anybody who's near flash flames, and that could be people who are out in the cold and people in the military mainly. Drag out! Drag out! Drag out!
Although Wickers fire-resistant underwear is not standard military issue, the company supplies it to various units of the U.S. military. Some soldiers in Iraq are receiving it from private sources.
We do have individual mothers and cousins and uncles of troops buying from our website that would send it over to their loved ones to wear and use.
So some underwear may give you peace of mind, but other underwear is made with a surprising energy source that can heal your aching feet. During World War II, U.S. Armed Forces impregnated servicemen's underwear with a new miracle insecticide to help prevent body lice. Dichlorodiphenyl-trichloroethane, also known as DDT. Underwear will return on Modern Marvels. We rely on our feet for a lot of support throughout life. To keep them warm and dry, Americans purchase nearly 4 billion pairs of socks every year. And with new strides being made in the sock-making trade, we can now take a step in the right direction with renewed confidence.
When I was in high school, you had basically two kinds of socks. You had black socks to go to church, you had white socks to play ball, and that was pretty much it.
Today, the Kaiser Roth hosiery plant in Asheboro, North Carolina, cranks out 48 million socks every year. It's been in the knitting game since 1902. Each of Kaiser Roth's 400 machines knits one sock every 90 seconds. The 200,000 square foot factory hums along in a virtually hands-free environment. Except for the inspectors, who check out the goods as they spit out of the knitters.
There's always many quality checks as we go along. Now this young lady, this teammate of ours, is taking product off the knitting machine and she's looking at it for any kind of defect. Cross stretch, a hole in the product, a misplate of the yarns, any possible defect that may be occurring in the knitting machine.
The knitted units shooting out of the machines aren't socks yet, but open-ended tubes called blanks. The blanks become socks here in the finishing room. If you've ever wondered why every pair of socks you own has that seam across the toes, this is the step that explains it. There are two different methods. One incorporates a human assist, and the other is completely automatic. It's accomplished by this Rube Goldberg-esque contraption, invented by the company's owner, Nerino Grazzi, called the Rosso Ultra Turn.
And this machine basically picks up socks in an automated way, actually orients it inside the machine, and then automatically closes the toe, and then deposits the sock on the other side of the machine. So it's able to go in, identify what the sock layout is, flip it around, turn it, change it, get it oriented, and at the very end of the process, it'll close that toe.
With the toe seams in place, the socks are ready for bleaching.
This tub will hold 600 pounds of socks. There are 3 pockets in the tub. Each pocket holds 200 pounds of socks.
After bleaching, a conveyor belt loads the socks into dryers. And oddly enough, not one is ever lost.
I wish I knew what happened to our socks in the dryer at home, but I can't seem to come out with the same amount that I put in. But here, we do keep up with all of them.
Any given pair of socks might have as many as 10 different fibers woven in. Everything from cotton to spandex. A far cry from the earliest socks. For hundreds of years, the men and women who could afford them wore long foot and leg coverings made typically of cotton or silk, called stockings. But in the 19th century, as men's pants got longer, the term got shorter, and socks became a part of our underwear vocabulary. This era also witnessed the rise of the first knitting mills in America, in which machines took over the knitting work previously done by hand.
This really goes back to the 1800s. It was a lot faster than hand knitting, but you could knit a pair of socks in. Basically, you could form long tubes with this. You could make a pair of socks in 2 or 3 hours versus 15, 16, 17 hours doing it by hand.
Machines like this began the march toward the high-tech wizardry creating today's socks. But making socks is one thing. Making sure they measure up to consumer expectations is another. That's the job of the Hosiery Technology Center, part of Catawba Valley Community College in North Carolina. It has a team of researchers and experts who act as the watchdogs of the sock industry. The able staff carefully analyzes the properties of the fibers used in socks, making sure that what the label says is what you get. One of the Technology Center's tests determines a sock's durability. This machine cycles a sandpaper-like material called Trizac back and forth across the socks. Most are tested over the course of 2 days, but some very hardy socks will make it more than a month. The team also conducts research on innovations that claim to do everything from preventing blisters to neutralizing stinky feet.
Foot odor is caused by bacteria that grows in moist areas, and your feet is a perfect place because it's inside the shoe. You've got sweat, you've got moisture, it's a perfect breeding ground.
There are 250,000 sweat glands in one human foot. Bacteria on the skin consume the sweat and excrete waste that causes the strong, foul odor. Scientists have found that knitting silver nanoparticles into socks helps solve the problem. The silver has inherent antimicrobial properties that enable it to kill bacteria. And it can comprise from 2 to 80% of these odor-eating socks. While the thread's technology is new, the cure is a time-honored tradition.
I've been told that one of the reasons a lot of the early sailors used to use silver canteens is because they knew of its ability to kill a lot of the microbes. So if you're using 100-year-old technology now just to make better socks, that's essentially what we're doing.
Making socks that are good for our feet can be a strain on the arms and wrists. So workers at the Kaiser Roth plant do exercises at shift changes to prevent carpal tunnel syndrome. But then it's back to work, steaming, folding, and packaging the socks.
So now we've been through the entire production process and we end up with a finished product. And I have a couple examples to show you. First, under the no-nonsense name, beautiful women's socks. And under the men's name in Burlington, great socks, great quality, all made in the United States.
Another technological breakthrough on the horizon for sock making promises to keep us light on our feet. A fabric called holofiber harnesses the power of the sun to help our socks relieve pain and increase energy and strength. Introduced into the world of sock making in 2003, it contains microscopic lenses embedded into the actual polyester fibers. These lenses channel available sunlight permeating the exposed part of the sock to increase blood flow and oxygen saturation in the foot. The holofiber uses light not only from the sun, but perhaps also from the foot itself.
The theory is this, that your body gives off energy all the time in the form of both heat and light. People who wear socks that have holofiber talk about having more energy, and they're more comfortable. They wear them on long flights and their feet don't swell.
In this test, we see one foot standing on holofiber and one foot on standard cotton fiber. Both feet have been exposed to cold temperatures. The foot on the holofiber reaches normal temperature almost immediately, while the other one takes several minutes. If only holofiber could help you locate your sock after it mysteriously fails to emerge from your dryer. While you're searching for it, ponder this. What's the secret ingredient added to the underwear of firefighters, race car drivers, and football players? If you unraveled all the yarn in an average pair of men's socks, it would stretch longer than 1 mile. Underwear will return on Modern Marvels. As these race car drivers thunder around the course at perilous speeds, their special underwear just may be saving their lives. Wondering how? Over the course of a race, the temperature inside the driver's compartment reaches as high as a scorching 140 degrees Fahrenheit. Heat stroke can occur if the body's temperature rises above 105 degrees. But the danger kicks in before that fatal threshold.
When you get too hot, your blood starts to go to your skin and for cooling, for perspiration. And when that happens, the heart is pumping to get it there. And then your major organs, including your brain, are not functioning on the blood supply they normally need.
This can impair decision-making ability, which can prove deadly in a high-speed race. The solution is the Cool Shirt.
Cold water is pumped in through all the tubes. In my back and the front side of me. I basically wear it underneath my fire suit.
It's a simple cotton t-shirt that has 45 to 60 feet of 1/8-inch vinyl tubing sewn onto the front and back.
We break the cooling of the garment into 4 cooling zones. And each one of the lines is within 2 inches of another line, so you don't have hot spots or cold spots.
2 small hoses on the shirt plug into a connector on the driver's side of the car.
As I hop in, you'll see the tubes connected to right here. And basically all they have to do is plug these in.
This connects the shirt to a cooler that circulates 4 ounces of 45-degree water through the entire shirt every 10 seconds.
This is a really basic system. This is where the ice and the water live. There's a pump that pumps cold water through these lines over to my cool shirt that's plugged into the car and into my suit. Pretty basic.
Rich Schaefer, a medical supply salesman and racing enthusiast, began manufacturing the cool shirt in 1998. He was inspired by a pioneering effort during the early days of the space program.
He had started back in the 60s with NASA with the astronauts in cooling them off when they put their suits on. They could not get rid of the body heat.
NASA's researchers found that when the outside temperature rises up to 95 degrees, a person can make up to 60 mistakes an hour. Bringing the temperature down just 5 degrees reduces the number of mistakes to an average of 9 per hour. NASA's liquid-cooled garment consisted of 300 feet of 3/16-inch tubing sewn onto a mesh bodysuit worn under the spacesuit. The astronauts carried backpacks that circulated cooled water through the tubing. It was first used in 1969 on the Apollo 9 flight. Rich Schaefer found that in most cases on Earth, a full-body suit wasn't necessary. Just bringing down the core temperature at the chest, abdomen, and back areas alleviates the problems of heat stress and heat stroke. In Atlanta, Georgia, the cool shirt has been called into active duty for the hazardous materials team of the Henry County Fire Department. Their protective suits may keep them safe from toxic chemicals and other dangers, but they can also send core temperatures skyrocketing. After returning from a mission, each man hooks up his cool shirt to accelerate his recovery procedure, called rehab.
In the level A suits, you do get extremely hot inside there, and you lose a lot of your body fluids. And if we can keep the core temperature of a personnel down, the quicker we can rehab them.
Really, I can't feel it, circulating anymore, but I can tell it's there because my temp's going down.
Many firefighters wear a different version of the cool shirt, called the cool vest, also to rehabilitate after battling a fire.
Recently, a local fire academy here, they had a death because during training, heat exhaustion was a problem. Firefighters go into a burn building, and in that burn building, they experience temperatures exceeding 400 degrees. That's even in training. They're wearing 70 pounds of gear. And so that they get put under a lot of heat stress.
For these firefighters, the vest is a lifesaver. And for many surgeons, it's the ideal way to stay cool as they save lives during demanding sessions in the OR.
It's like the feeling you get when you dive into a lake to get refreshed. If you're working and you know that you have a 2-hour case ahead of you, it makes you feel secure that it will keep you comfortable throughout the procedure, not only for our comfort, but for the patient's benefit as well. I would say don't go into the operating room without it.
In years to come, cool underwear may also become a must on the gridiron. These football players at Union Grove High School in McDonough, Georgia, are among those leading the way.
We're out here practicing in 100-degree weather, 95 with the humidity so high here in Georgia. It's just going to be a great safeguard for these kids.
It's actually really cold, but it's very beneficial. After a long day's practice like today, it's definitely going to help a lot, cooling me off.
It feels real good, keeps your body, hydrated, keep the core cool. I like it.
Count this simple yet effective technology among the many ways that underwear continues to evolve and redefine its limits. With any luck, the innovators dreaming up ideas for the apparel we can't do without will continue to think outside the boxes. It's the next best thing to your own skin. Painstakingly crafted by skilled hands and machinery that stretches the limits of high tech. It'll keep you dry, take your pulse, and save the life of a hero trying to save you. From the totally hot,
come on, this is a dream job for every man in the world,
to the refreshingly cool.
I would say don't go into the operating room without it.
It's time to take a peek at the untold story of underwear on Modern Marvels. Welcome to the Underwear Affair, an annual race in Los Angeles, California that benefits the City of Hope Hospital. In this revealing celebration of what normally is out of sight, participants wear their favorite unmentionables for all to admire. Every shape, style, color, and size is represented. Chances are that few of these guys have any clue that their boxers or briefs have already been through a marathon of sorts before they even bought them. For Jockey International, one of the industry's leading players, that long journey begins at manufacturing sites all over the world, including the Central American nation of Honduras. At its plant in San Pedro Sula, over 700 workers produce more than 26 million undergarments per year.
What you're seeing now is our sewing facility. We're sewing in this facility 40,000 dozens per week, which are roughly 500,000 pairs of underwear.
300 workers in the sewing facility piece together everything from t-shirts to women's underwear to the classic style that's been around since 1935, the Jockey Y-front brief. The Y-front brief is made from 4 pieces of cotton fabric, strategically sewn together with the open fly flap positioned at the front. Resembling an upside-down Y, the flap provides support and easy access when nature calls.
We're the only company that produces it, and that is what, differentiates us from the other companies. It's our trademark.
Jockey's signature brief is composed primarily of cotton. After the cotton is cleaned and combed at Jockey's plants in North Carolina, it arrives in Honduras. At the Parkdale plant in San Pedro Sula, this raw material must be reduced to the thin cotton yarn from which every brief is made. In 6 hours, one knitting machine will churn out 400 pounds of cotton fabric. After bleaching, it's now ready to become a brief. At yet another site, the cutting facility, 300 workers hand-cut the pattern pieces that make up the classic brief and other Jockey undergarments.
It's not the easiest job. Actually, it requires a lot of skill. Their training for hand cutting takes around 6 months. Which is a long period for them to become a 100% operator.
The cutters wear chainmail gloves to protect their hands as they wend their way through the twists and turns of the patterns. The fabric they cut is 200 layers thick. To craft more exacting designs, they use a die-cutting machine. Every week, man and machine combine to produce enough fabric pieces to make over 1 million undergarments. The next step happens at Premier Narrow Fabrics. Machines in this factory are creating the elastic bands that give Jockey briefs that nice snug fit. Elastic has been holding up our underpants since the 1930s, when it replaced cumbersome buttons, snaps, and ties. The elastic strands, consisting of spandex-coated cotton, are woven on a mechanized loom engineered by inventor Joseph Marie Jacquard.
Behind me is a Jacquard Mueller machine, 48 hooks, used to weave elastic. you can do names or patterns of designs with this machine that automatically puts in the designs or name in there for you.
Every week, Premier Narrow Fabrics provides the bands for 400,000 pairs of jockey briefs. Finally, the elastic bands and cut fabric meet at the sewing facility, where skilled hands and high-tech machinery team up to form the finished briefs and boxers. For centuries, men did without underwear as we know it, wearing tights that were open at the crotch, letting it all hang loose beneath their tunic-like overgarments. But during the Renaissance, when those garments got embarrassingly shorter, men donned pouch-like attachments called codpieces. Some codpieces not only concealed a man's assets, but also accentuated them. And some even doubled as change purses. In the 19th century, the underwear of choice for both men and women was the one-piece woolen union suit. The first ones were dyed red.
Of course, they played havoc with the wash water because they all ran, and it was just kind of a mess.
By the late 1800s, all union suits were uniformly woven with dull gray wool thread. This purely functional garment was designed to keep you warm and protect your outer clothing from body oils and odors. Some men wore the same union suit. First, in a process called drafting, rollers compress 5,200 fibers of the combed cotton into one strand a half-inch thick, called sliver. The sliver then passes through another machine. These rollers are running 30 times faster than the first drafting process, and they give the yarn a tight spiral twist, reducing its thickness even more.
And we put this material onto a bobbin that is going to allow us to transport the material to the next process, which is spinning.
The spinning process stretches the yarn to its final width, 2 1/100ths of an inch thick, about the same thickness as a human hair. The yarn winds up on rolls 1 foot in diameter. Each roll has enough yarn to stretch more than 20 miles. That's just long enough to get it to its next destination in Honduras. Alcatex, an independent textile factory. Here, machines knit the yarn into the fabric used to make all of jockeys' underwear.
Our plant is designed to produce about 1.8 million pounds of fabric a week.
The knitting machines are programmed to produce hundreds of different styles and thread counts. The thread count determines the thickness and strength of the fabric.
We actually have 792 needles, 34 threads going into the machine at the same time, and it has a 14 cut. That means that there's 14 needles per inch knitting at the same time.